1. The first part of this story. My store went to transfer a decently sized TV to another store. In the process of it being shipped, the shipping company dropped it, effectively destroying it. What should have happened is the receiving store should have accepted it, put it in damaged inventory, and filed a freight claim on it. What they actually did was refuse shipment, which means it got sent back to us. Now, this company was using inventory management systems from the early 90s. This was in 2006. And one thing you couldn't do below the store manager level was cycle things into the inventory. And since this TV wasn't being transferred to us, all we could do was notify the store manager to have him cycle it in. And then file a freight claim, and once that was done, destroy the TV. So we got the TV back, and it goes into this weird kind of ether inventory. We physically have it, but logistically, we don't have. But we did have it originally. So take the TV, file the paperwork, and shove in a back room until we see that the freight claim had been paid. The only person at the store level who could see if the specific freight claim had been paid was the store manager. So cue the second headache of this story. This is where we entered a period of about 14 months where we simply could not keep a store manager for longer than 5 months. They would either be fired, transferred, or promoted after a couple of months. So checking to see if a $400 freight claim has been paid just wasn't especially high on the priority list at the time. So we've gone through like 5 GMs at this point. The TV is still sitting there. All we need to know is if the claim has been paid and acknowledged. We would later find out it would take about 3 minutes for a store manager to get that particular answer. We get what would turn out to be our third to last store manager. The company itself closed 18 months later, at the time of the events of this story. I think you will see why. The company itself was at that point just before it starts realizing that it's on the edge of folding. You know, not quite at the point where they start closing underperforming stores, but if you're looking at the numbers, you would know that it's being talked about. The manager we had at this point was trying to wring every penny out of everything he possibly could through every means he could. Well, he found the TV that wasn't actually in our inventory, and we couldn't resell it, and decided that getting $800 for it was a great idea. Remember how I said the TV was $400 before? No, I'm not stuttering here. He wanted to get the freight claim paid for the TV, then have me process a return on the TV, so we would get what we originally paid to the manufacturer back. Sounds super sketchy, right? Yeah, well, it is. As in outright illegal. So I did what I was told to do, right? No. I explained the situation to the manager and expressed my concern that what he was asking me to do was illegal. He said he'd double check on that. I sent an email up to the district loss prevention asking about the TV and, in theory, asking if it would be illegal to do such a return. The loss prevention operator didn't have a chance to go through freight claims to find one specific claim, but said if I processed a return on an item that did not belong to us, the freight claim basically means that the shipping company had bought the TV. It would be considered embezzlement, as would processing a return and then getting the freight claim. So yeah, the management was straight up telling me to commit an illegal action. But word of mouth isn't good enough for defense on its own. In truth, he hadn't actually told me to do the return, just talked about having me do the return and said he would look into it. Well, a week later, and the store manager tells me to process the return. I ask about the freight claim, and he told me not to worry about that. It's been taken care of. I go to start processing the return. The warehouse manager sees me processing the return and asks about it. When I tell him what the store manager said, he said he hasn't received the paperwork for the cancelled freight claim, meaning the claim was either still waiting or was already paid. Well, this was a total shift for me, as it pretty much solidified the point that the manager had just tried to set me up to be rolled under the bus if this ever came up. The warehouse manager agreed that the only way I was going to process a return on this TV was if we had the cancelled freight claim. And cue the next 10 days, where about 2 days the store manager would tell me to do the return. I would ask to see the cancelled freight claim, and him saying he would get it to me later. He tells me one more time to do the return. At this point, I'm tired of having this conversation. But telling your boss that you're not going to do something they're telling you to do because you think they are trying to embezzle money just isn't going to go well. So I tell him that I'm really busy, and what would be really helpful is if he sent me an email about the TV including the SKU number. That way it'll go in my inbox and that'll be a reminder for me. Translation, I want a paper trail that doesn't end at me. I honestly never thought he would actually do it. Well, surprise, surprise, he actually sent me the email. I laughed, printed out a copy, took it to the warehouse manager and said, "Hey, check out what the manager just sent me." Showing him the email, he read it over and said, "Oh, fantastic." Took the email and started pulling records. I went back to my office while he sent a lengthy email up to the corporate loss prevention. So 10 days later, we haven't heard back from corporate yet. I've been having an annoying day, and I decided to head down the line to a bar and grill for lunch. I just turned to head that way outside the store when I hear, "Hey, how's it going?" I turned to see the district manager and another guy that I didn't recognize next to him. The district manager and I had the same name, and had met one another a couple of times over the last 2 years, and we kind of looked alike. You know, if you squinted really hard and were blind in one eye, and looked at us underwater with no goggles. I mean, the similarity ended at both of us being guys 6 feet tall, heavy-set, and had dark brown hair. He got some sort of delight out of the running joke of talking to himself. I humored him normally, no harm in it, right? Well, this time he was that kind of serious casual people get when they're going to do something serious. But not to the person they are talking to right now. The district manager and I shake hands and exchange some pleasantries. He introduces me to the other guy, Ricky. It's at this point we notice Ricky is wearing the gold LP collar pin, and my mind starts rolling, trying to connect the name with loss prevention. I know the name should mean something when it finally clicks. Ricky was technically the territorial loss prevention manager, but he had considerable pull all the way up to the CEO and beyond. He had a history of having worked with the FBI and multiple police departments over the year. I have no idea if the story is true or not, but there was a story about Ricky showing up to a store and the entire management staff being taken out of the store in handcuffs. I tell the district manager it's good saying hi, but I'm on my lunch. He gives me a pat on the back and says to enjoy it. He and Ricky head into the store. I proceed down to the bar and grill. I pull out my phone and call the warehouse manager to tell him Ricky showed up. So I go to lunch, order it, eat it, pay for it, and head back to the store. Something like 25 minutes round trip in total. By the time I got back to the store manager had offered his resignation. The district manager had accepted, and the store manager had left the store. I found out later the store manager was already being investigated for a bunch of company policy issues regarding paperwork and records. The email the warehouse manager had sent suddenly shifted that investigation to a loss prevention investigation. 2. This story is from a bit of a way back when the original Xbox was released. I was working at a large-scale toy store, and we had been doing a pre-order for the Xbox. $50 down payment, and you had one reserved for you on the release date. You could buy one outright on release day as well. We sold the Xbox in 2 ways by itself, and in a bundle packaged with 3 games, an extra controller, and a travel bag. Both options could be pre-ordered or bought on the day of release. I was put in charge of organizing and running the release event at the store. To make the checkouts as easy and quick as possible, I made 2 UPC sheets. One with the UPCs you need to scan for the bundle package of the console by itself if you were picking up a pre-order, and one for non-pre-orders. I even made sure that these sheets were color-coded and had big letters at the top of the sheets. The pre-order UPCs were on a red sheet. The non-pre-orders were on a green sheet. I tried to make this as idiot-proof as I possibly could. The electronics department had 2 registers. and I was assigned 2 people to cover them: Richard and Peggy. I would be working support, grabbing items, pulling consoles, suggesting upsells, answering questions, handling problems, etc. I ran Peggy and Richard through a battery of dummy sales to make sure they knew what to do with the transactions. If they were ringing out a pre-order, either scan the pre-order slip if the customer had it, or look up the info and then scan the appropriate UPCs on the red sheet. If it was not a pre-order, scan the UPCs on the green sheet. Everything looked good. We opened, and the flood started. It was a rush, but at the same time was exciting. I was making upsells left and right, talking about different games, doing demos, explaining different add-ons, grabbing controllers, grabbing games, showing the bag from the bundle package. Like I said, busy but exciting. By about noon, the rush had died down. I moved Richard back onto the floor while Peggy stayed on the second register. She had injured her leg, so she was on that register with the understanding that it was a position where she would need to do the least moving. I checked a couple of reports and saw we had sold over 2,500 consoles so far that day. I had a customer come up and ask how much the bundle package would be without the travel bag. I start crunching the numbers in my head, figuring that the bundle was $600 before tax and the travel bag was $40. So that would make the bundle... It would be about $510. Peggy suddenly chimed in. The customer thanks us for the info and leaves. That doesn't sound right to me. I pull some paper and start crunching the numbers. I come up with $560. I double-check the prices in my calculations. They are accurate. I ran some dummy transactions to confirm the numbers. It came out to $560. I'm starting to get an ugly pit in my stomach. I page Richard and meet him at the entrance to the department. I ask him which sheet he had used to ring out an Xbox that wasn't a pre-order pickup. He immediately answered, saying the green sheet. He then confirms that he used the red sheet for the pre-orders. I go to Peggy and ask her what sheet she had used to ring out customers if they were buying a bundle package. Notice I didn't mention if they were a pre-order or not. She points to the red sheet. I ask what UPC she was scanning if someone bought a console by itself. She points to the UPC on the red sheet for the console by itself. What if they were picking up a pre-order console? I ask. She again points at the same UPC. What if they were picking up a bundle pack that wasn't a pre-order? The pit in my stomach is hurting now. She points to the column of UPCs for the bundle on the red sheet. The horror is setting in. I page the manager and ask him to meet me at the office. Peggy asks, "What's wrong?" And I point to the heading on the red sheet that reads, "For pre-order pickup." She realizes what I just laid out and immediately starts begging me not to tell the management. Yeah, no, I'm not taking the rap for you failing to follow simple instructions. The manager and I head into the office and I explain what I just figured out. We start pulling reports and realize with horror how bad it actually is. The store had something like 750 pre-order records, and we had recorded over 1,500 pre-order pickups. We've just figured out that we've lost upwards of $40,000. Well, short of the long, we did more looking around, and found those extra orders had been rung out by Peggy. She was fired. 4 months later, the company did a reorganization, and my position was eliminated, so I was laid off. I was planning to attend a trade school later in the year, and I saw the local department store was hiring. So I figured work there for 6 months and head to school afterwards. So I drop an app, get hired as an assistant department supervisor, and go to orientation. The store is actually prepping for a remodel, so they're doing a mass orientation of like 60 or 70 people. I'm talking to people and introducing myself when suddenly I heard a woman shout, "So you're the SOB that got me fired?" At the toy store. This led to a fun little conversation with the store manager and HR manager. I don't know what they did with Peggy, but I never saw her again. Really, I don't know how I could have made it any simpler. If it's a pre-order, use the red sheet. If it's not a pre-order, use the green sheet. If you're colorblind, read the big bold headings and use the appropriate sheet. I guess it's an object example of nothing is ever idiot-proof, but still. 3. You know how they always say never say no to a customer in retail? Well, there was a time when I was actually able to get away with telling a customer no. Well, kind of. This is from when I was working for a big box electronics company that was in the process of going bankrupt at the time and was closing its stores. I was the person in charge of processing returns. Want to know what one of the first things that happens when a store is in the process of closing? It stops taking returns. The receipt printers would print this on the receipts, and the cashier would either write "All sales final" or highlight the "No return" on the receipts. So, since I was in charge of dealing with returns at a store that was no longer taking returns, you can imagine what my workload did. So I spent my time wandering the store, helping where I could with what I could. One day, I found myself at the customer service desk, dealing with a customer who wanted to, return something. I think it was some car accessory gizmo, but I don't remember. I just remember that it was sold for $28.20. Yeah, I know. My brain remembers some crazy, pointless things. Anyway, his receipt had it written in red magic marker, "No returns," on it. So cue a 10 to 12 minute conversation that went something like, "I want to return this." "I'm sorry, sir, but we're no longer accepting returns." "Why not?" "Because the store is closing." "But I want to return this." "I'm sorry, sir, but we're not accepting returns anymore." "But I drove down here to return this." "I'm sorry, sir. As it says on your receipt, we are not accepting returns anymore." "But I need to return this." "I'm sorry, sir, but we are no longer accepting returns." "Why not?" "Because the store and company are closing. All sales are final." "But I bought it last week, so I'm in the returns period." "Yes, sir, you would be in the returns period if the company were accepting returns and were undertaking normal operations, but we are closing, so all sales are final, as it says on your receipt." "But I need to return this." "I'm sorry, but all my sales are final and we are not accepting returns." "But I want to return this." I think you can fill in the rest of the 10-minute conversation. With each repetition, this guy is getting just a little bit more pissed off as he is trying to gear to strong-arm his way into making us take a return. For the record, we are incapable of actually performing a return. The entire function had been disabled in the registers, so beyond taking the item, throwing it in a corner and waiting for the inventory mismatch — it would pop up in 3 weeks — stealing $28.20 from a register and handing it to him, there was nothing we could do. So, this isn't a case of we're choosing not to take a return or anything like that. Finally, the guy decides we've hit that magical point where he can get away with asking to see a manager, and makes a request to see a manager. I was emboldened by the reality of the store closing. I literally had 3 weeks left on the job, had no performance incentives, got paid by the hour, and already had my schedule for the next 3 weeks confirmed. I don't think it was possible to be fired at that point, so I opted to have some fun. I turned around right in front of him, clasped my hands behind my back, put on the fakest smile I could summon the energy to do, turned back around to face him and said, "Hello, sir, I am the manager. How can I help you?" In the absolute most obscenely brainwashed worker drone that has been trained to be cheerful and happy, as they anatomically can be tone that I could think of at the time. Dude turns tomato red and gets super pissed off. He starts screaming about calling corporate and getting me fired. Still having some fun with this, I pick up the phone and dial the corporate number, put it on speaker and crank the volume to max. "Hello, and thank you for calling. We regret to inform you that this company will be closing its doors soon, but you can still cash in on some great deals. Be sure to check out our stores for closing deals on the latest hot tech. Be advised that all sales are final and we are not accepting any returns. Thank you for your business." Played over the speaker, followed by a moment of silence before it repeated. The guy just gets more pissed and declares he was going to sue us, and stormed out, leaving the item he wanted to return on the counter. Never did hear anything else from him. 4. I'll say this because it's important. I work at a certain chain thrift store. You know, the blue one. It's not a bad job overall. I have a set schedule, same days off every week, and breaks at the same time every day. I was hired to be in production, but you know how that goes. I'm up at the register as backup a lot of the time, but today the lead cashier called off, so I filled in for her. As cashiers, we also have to find time in between checking people out for our floor work, pulling old merchandise off the shelves and taking it to the back. My coworker got assigned to pull a very cluttered section that really eats time. It's also located in the back of the store, so she couldn't watch the registers while she was doing it, and because what she was pulling was considered fragile, it had to be taken out back and loaded into the trash compactor. All of this adds up to me being alone up front for a long stretch of time. And we were busy that day. A bunch of rude boomers were out in droves. My coworker is so nice. She knew how bad this could be for me. She waited until we were slow and told me to page her when it got busy. She then went to go to her pulls. Lo and behold, we did get busy. I called for backup as I begin to drown in a sea of customers until I hear my rescue call. I can help the next person in line on register 2. We start dealing with the backup and things start moving again. Near the end of the rush, I check out this Karen and her 16-year-old daughter. The Karen asks me what my coworker's name is, and like an idiot I tell her. In my defense, I didn't realize I was talking to a Karen at that moment. I couldn't imagine anyone being mad at my coworker, who just ran across the store to save me from a sea of boomers.
Good, because I'm filing a complaint against her.
I was shocked, but I didn't get a chance to even respond before she goes into a rant. She says my coworker was throwing mugs into a cart. No, she wasn't. And that it wasn't safe for her daughter, who was at least 16 years old. For context, what my coworker was doing was, at worst, lightly tossing 1 or 2 mugs because she had just come from the compactor, and you really have to throw those things in there. She caught herself immediately and corrected it to placing them more gently, while still trying to hurry through her pulls. I switch into customer service mode and explain that it wasn't a big deal if the mugs got chipped, because she wasn't damaging actual floor merchandise, and this bitch will not hear it. She says there was glass flying everywhere, fuck no it wasn't, and that it was unsafe. I see she won't be talked down, so I decided to ring her up very carefully as not to make her even angrier. I finish, she leaves, and the next and last people in my line are shocked at how rancid that woman was. I talk to my coworker, apologize for giving them her name, and explain the situation. She's upset, not at me, and hurt because she wasn't doing anything wrong and returns to her pulls. I explain to my manager what just happened, and as soon as I get done, the phone rings, and guess who it was with a complaint? Against my coworker and the rude cashier who checked them out. At the end of the day, my boss pulled me into the office to discuss the complaint. She took my side because she is a good manager, but filled me in on what the customer's complaint was. I was too nonchalant, and it pissed Karen off. She complained that I wasn't upset. Also, she flipped me off as she left because I made her so angry, by not being angry or rude myself. What the fuck? I could have told Karen she was a rancid bitch, and I hope she would never darken my store's doorway again. Please have a terrible day, thank you. But I chose not to, and she complained anyway. Fucking bitch. My manager agreed that there was nothing I could have done, and I explained that my coworker did nothing wrong either. But something might still come of this if the bitch complains to corporate, which she probably will. But whatever, it doesn't matter to me either way, and if my coworker gets fired over this, I'm walking off the job on the spot. Sometimes you just can't win. 5. I work at the dollar store, so you should already know that we have a strange plethora of people that come in here, both as customers and the occasional employee. I'd like to share my frustrations here about 2, who I will refer to as Amy and Sam. Amy was a fairly normal employee. Until you looked into what she did when nobody was looking. One day she was working and somebody approached her with a mysterious package, and she left for the bathroom. The next day she wound up in rehab. Another time, one of my co-workers was on the clock with her and noticed some white streaks under Amy's nose. She told my boss about it, and Amy no longer works here. It's perfectly normal for retail employees to have a cigarette or a vape outside, but goddamn, cocaine in the bathroom is something else entirely. But Amy was absolutely nothing compared to Sam. When he first walked in for his interview, the very first thing that stood out was the fact that he was wearing an InfoWars t-shirt. My original thought was that as long as he kept that kind of stuff away from work, he would do just fine. But he somehow managed to take some already low expectations and go even lower. No wonder literally everyone found a reason to hate him. When he did start working here, one of the things he did was bring in a water purifier with a bunch of stickers of InfoWars logos and slogans decorating it. He also liked to go on these rambles about Alex Jones' choice for supplements, or whatever, when someone bought vitamins. He also had this weird protein shake stashed underneath his register, which looked like a brown mushy substance with white spots, but kept inside a mayonnaise jar. One day, when a manager was taking Sam down for the day and having him sign the paper that states, "I have all of today's money in my till," he spilled said protein shake all over the paper and himself. He then proceeded to gather it up with his hands, lick it off of them, sign the papers in that order. We believe that incident is directly responsible for that manager taking about 2 weeks off for his sick break. Not only did he have some unusual habits like stated above, he was also just flat out incompetent. Whenever someone clocked in for their shift, Sam would always say that he was going to the bathroom and would be there for about 15 minutes or so doing God knows what, along with going on breaks for about an hour when we were only allowed 10 minutes. Management literally had to make plans to ensure he would be on the register. He loved walking off randomly for his potty breaks and whatnot. He was also given the occasional task of assembling brooms and mops for display. Normally, that is a very easy task, since you just have to screw the head on the pole. But Sam got halfway through one box before he decided to clock out and go home for the day. I also heard he once stole a 20 out of the register, and managed to avoid being fired for anything I have mentioned so far, by reason of, "It's Christmas time, and we need literally anyone we can get." During his final week working here, he continued to be an absolute moron, and took a hit from his vape inside the building. My boss caught him and was absolutely furious, screaming at him, and I quote, "If I catch you doing that again, I will personally throw you out of this store." The straw that broke the camel's back was when Sam said he was going on break, despite the fact that he already had his for today, and failed to come back when he was called to help us with a line of customers. The manager present had enough of his bullshit and took him down early. When he came back, he then had the audacity to ask said manager, who was already incredibly angry with him, "I need tomorrow off." My manager responded that Sam could have the rest of his shifts off and never return. All of us employees genuinely felt happier when we got the news that he no longer worked there. But did a firing stop Sam from coming in? No. When he got the call from my boss confirming his termination, he came back with the water purifier I mentioned earlier and splashed it all around the bathroom in anger, which is mild compared to what some of us thought he would do. He continued to return as a customer, usually in the company of 2 equally insane women, one of them having an anxiety attack while checking out because of the stress of checking out. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Adventures in Fast Food and Retail, episode 151. And thank you very much to everybody who listened to this video and did the things and stuff and the whatnots. But don't poke a bear. Okay, right, now, or a squirrel. Don't poke any woodland creatures, really. Right, where are we? This is Monday the 7th. Okay, hey Hellfreezer, why were there no videos last week? Well, I'll tell you why there were no videos. As you know, I've been having health issues, still am, so I went to see a doctor, figuring, well, I think I can handle this at home anyway, but I better just go get things checked. And this doctor, well-meaning, but panicked because they saw how bad my skin was and decided they wanted to send me to the hospital. And I thought, well, okay, you're the doctor. If you think it's that bad, I should go. But when I got there, not a pleasant experience by any stretch of the imagination, but when I got there, it became quite obvious that, yeah, they really couldn't do much of anything to help me, that I couldn't do much better at home. So I spent a night essentially in pain without my ointments or anything that I needed, because I wasn't told to take anything with me. Wasn't offered anything either to help my skin or the pain until the next day, where they gave me something that isn't really ideal. It's only one of the things I can use. It's not the things I really need to use. And this was at the point I told them I was leaving anyway, which they didn't seem to like. I thought, okay, somebody's willing to not take up a bed. Surely that's a good thing. Anyway, I had to stick around to speak to a doctor. And I did, and yeah, sure enough, they agreed. They actually listened to me. They understood that I pretty much knew what I was doing. And they just, as a precaution, gave me antibiotics. The one silver lining, and I really shouldn't have had to spend the night in hospital to make this happen, given how bad it was they were able to get me in to see a dermatologist. And I was very lucky in that instead of waiting the month, which would have been the quickest, they were able to find at the dermatology department a cancellation for me. So I got in the next day. And I'm on new pills, right? So that's why there was no new videos last week. Let's move on. Right, we have a couple of missed birthday shout-outs. The first one goes to Sherilyn's husband. There we go, Philip. And Philip's birthday was on the 5th of February. I hope you had a very happy birthday, Philip. And that comes with much love from Sherilyn. Okay. And the next one, I think, was intended as a twofer. They're both this week. Well, they're not actually. One was in February the 1st, one is in the 10th. But father and son, little Timmy, and James. And I think they're celebrating a joint birthday at some point this week. Okay, so Timmy's was on Tuesday, and James will be on Thursday. So we're going to attempt a threefer when I sing later. All I can say is, Timmy, just be kind to your dad and don't try to, break his kneecaps or anything before we get to his birthday. After that, fine, it's all good, but let the man enjoy his birthday. Okay, and with that, before I go, I'd like to sing happy birthday to everyone. So here we go. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Philip. Dear Timmy, dear Jane, happy birthday to you. Alrighty, and I think we'll wrap things up there for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.